Oh yeah, I just got a message. Remember to record. There we go. Okay, cool. Awesome, guys. Well, there might be a couple other people trickling in, maybe not. But the plan is really just to kind of like hang out, get to know you guys. It's so impersonal watching a screen. And so we kind of put this on the schedule just to get to know you a little bit, make it feel a little bit more personal. I know even through Zoom, it's still kind of weird, but we'll just kind of jump in. I'll ask some questions. If you've got questions, just speak up, just go for it. If you want to raise your hand, you can do that, and I can call on you if you feel more comfortable that way. But we'll just jump right in with some introductions. You guys probably already heard me talk, just because I shared a little bit earlier, but Jimmy Leasure, I am an associate pastor. And so is there anybody else? Raise your hand if you're an associate pastor. Anybody else associate, do stuff outside of young adults? Anybody do outside of young adult stuff? Okay, yeah. So that's kind of where I found myself with young adults, is like, it's not my primary, it's just another thing on my plate. And so there's a whole lot of things, a whole lot of different hats to wear. And so young adults is kind of one of those things. So, but yeah, I live in Mankato, Minnesota. I live in a university town, so MSU is right down the street from us. And yeah, so I'm gonna have you guys all share your names, maybe where you're from, and then if you had an unlimited budget, where would you go for vacation? I'll just ask away. Okay, so let's start with Gabe.
So I'm at Watermark. We have a really good young adult ministry going. Right now, I kind of talked about this in my last group, but we have, from the point we got there to now, everybody's kind of stuck with us. And a few people have joined, but we're all getting older. So now it's getting to the stage if we have to start bringing in the younger people. That's the stuff we're figuring out right now. If I could do anything or go anywhere, if I had all the money, either New Zealand to see all the Lord of the Rings areas, or I'd go to Norway and hike.
Dang, yeah. New Zealand is amazing. Never been there, but just seen pictures. We had a good friend of mine just go there. And so, yeah, that's a great choice. What about you, Josh?
Yeah, my name's Josh Lester. Just share a little bit. I am I Grace Fellowship, right outside the Columbus area, where I pushed about 4,000 pre-COVID, about 2,000 post. We have 4 campuses. I work at one of our campuses that's literally like 5 minutes away from Ohio State University. So we have an influx of young adults, and I was just kind of basically like our young adult ministry started. So we actually had our first like event 2 weeks ago, which was great. If I could go anywhere, I'm a big soccer fan, and so I think I'd go to England to go watch some games. So if I had the money to do that, so.
Dang. You, what's your favorite like stateside team?
Orlando City.
Orlando City, nice.
Orlando City.
Well, do you play FIFA at all?
I do, yeah.
We might have to connect a little bit.
I love it.
Hey, Shay, we are just doing introductions and who you are, where you're kind of helping out with young adults. And then if you had an unlimited budget, where would you go for vacation?
Okay, sorry, what was the second question? Where are you at with young adults?
Yeah, where are you serving at?
Okay. Well, our team didn't communicate. Oh. Our team didn't communicate well because Gabe and I are from the same church, so with Watermark Church. No, I'm just kidding. But okay, I'm Shabu. I'm with Watermark Church, and if I had unlimited budget, I would go, oh man, maybe to somewhere to the mountains, or I don't know. I've been dying to go skiing out west again, so
cool.
I don't know. That might be that's probably a pretty lame answer, but
no, that's great. No, that's great. Love the mountains. What about you, Peng?
Yep. Hi, everyone. My name's Peng. And so we run a young adult ministry in St. Paul. So we go to First Hmong Assembly of God in St. Paul.
Who's there
And
with
this is
Hello,
Lang.
my name is Lang.
He helps with young adult, and this is
Hi, I'm Gao. I help serve with Painter in the Young Adult Ministry.
Very cool.
yeah. So we help run the young adult ministry at our church, and this is our second year being together doing the ministry. So it's still young, up and running, but we have a big influx of youth going into the young adult season, and so that's why we really felt God calling us to help with that need. And so that's a little bit about us. And then for me personally, if I had a budget to go anywhere, I mean, it would have to probably be between going into Italy or going into Japan. One of the two.
Dang, some long plane rides right there. That's for sure. Very cool. Nice to meet you guys. What about Alyssa? Caught her in the middle of a workout. Okay, there we go.
I had to pause my workout real quick. I was telling Jimmy that when you're just watching a YouTube video, it's so easy to walk along with it. And then Zoom kind of changes things. So sorry if I'm out of breath, but my name is Alyssa Hoekstra. I am trying to be healthier. So there we go. I work in Wilmer at the AG Church there with Pastor Manny, doing some of the young adult admin stuff for him. Just started in September, so feels pretty recent, even though it's been like a few months already. But yeah, we started doing more small groups. We'll have like one big together night the first Monday of the month, and then the rest of it is small groups where we're going over Bible studies and getting to know people in those smaller settings instead of just a big service together. So it's been fun and interesting, and trying to figure out how to tweak that to be the best that it can be. So
Very
yeah,
cool.
that.
And if you could go anywhere on
And-
an unlimited budget, where would you go?
Yeah, my dream has always been to take like several months and go do a tour of Europe, just like the entire thing. So take a long time and experience each different place. So I would just crash in Europe for like a long time.
Yes, maybe I'll have to tell Derek and just say, hey, I feel like God is really putting this on my heart to share with
You
you.
can. I
Take
mean, he
Alyssa
knows,
to Europe.
but you definitely should do that.
That's awesome. And we have first NLR from Arkansas. Got a little group here. So if you guys want to, you could just say your names and where you're from. And yeah, if you had unlimited budget, where would you go?
Hi there. We have several in the room. We've got Jada and Caitlin, and then Sarah and Alex, and I'm off screen right now. My name's Carling.
Oh, okay, got you.
Pewterer, which I don't blame you for not attempting to pronounce that when it popped up.
Yeah.
But we're part of our young adult leadership team here at First Assembly of God, North Little Rock. Randy Jumper's our pastor. We've been trying to figure out where we would go as a team if we were going to go on vacation with unlimited budget, having some difference between hot and cold over here. So
Gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah, it's that's tricky for sure. Yeah, being in Minnesota, it's like get away from the cold as much as possible. So especially right now, but awesome. Excited to have you all with us. I thought it'd be good to get to know each other a little bit. And as I ask some questions, if you have like a response to them, maybe just put the hand up as a reaction, and or just speak up. I don't really care. We can kind of just flow with this however it works. But if you have a thought or whatever, just maybe put the hand up, and so I know that you want to say something and I can stop talking. That would be great too. So my first question though, just to kind of get the COVID thing out the way, I don't want to like berate you with too much of that. But my question is really, what's the biggest lesson that you have learned and has actually changed the way that you do ministry? And practically, how has that changed your ministry? If you could just say like one thing. I know it's changed a lot of different things the way we do ministry, but if you say it's maybe better this way, what would you say that is?
Yeah, we've just been having the conversation just with our staff, just about like what does our ministry routine look like, and I feel like kind of pre-COVID it was more institutional tactics, so like emails and services and doing stuff like that, and we've started to really think through like what does it look like to get rid of those institutional tactics and actually move towards individual touches like we used to, which has just been a big change. So I feel like we kind of started, the needle was in the middle and we started to move towards institutional, and now we're just moving it kind of back in the middle where we're still doing our services, still doing the things that we need to do, but also like making sure that like our individual touches are our main priority in this season.
Yeah, individual touches, that's huge. That's huge. Anybody else have something?
I think for us, we just talked about how we've learned that like less is more. Like we don't have to do so much. Like I know prior to COVID, we tried to do things, you know, weekly, have like one big thing each month, and we've kind of learned that obviously COVID has stripped some of that away. But if we kind of keep the main things, the main thing, that we can still, you know, connect with our young adults. And so less is more, and that's okay.
Mm. That's a really good point. I think I've seen that in different models of church health, right? When you're gaining momentum, it's like you have all this excitement, you're creating all these new things, and then all of a sudden you have all of these programs that you developed. And at the height of your church, you have all the volunteers you need, you have all the momentum, you have all the excitement and all the programs. And then when churches start dying, it's when you have these programs that people are getting burned out by. And so people are kind of walking away from them, but you're still trying to maintain the programs because to some leaders, they might think that those programs is what creates success in their church. But it's actually an indicator for church health that when we're trying to push programs like that too much, and we don't have the people to actually hold them up, it actually hurts us more than helps us. And that's what it sounds like you've started seeing. And so, yeah, we saw that in our church as well. I know for me, and I want to hear from a couple more of you. So please be thinking of different touch points or different things that it's changed you. But I remember about a month or two in, I got a text message from a friend that I haven't heard from in probably a year or two. He sent me a video message text straight to my phone. And he was just like talking straight to me and encouraging me. And then he prayed for me all in this like 2-3 minute video. And I remember getting that video thinking, I feel seen. Like in this world that is now just like church is just all digital at that time, and very impersonal. This was like a moment that kind of marked me and changed me when I was looking at this video. And this guy who I haven't seen or talked to in such a long time just made me feel seen. And so I took that moment, and I honestly, for the next couple of days, I just blocked off time in my calendar and I recorded videos and I sent them to leaders, and I was calling them by name. I was saying the things that I specifically loved about that leader, and I encouraged them and prayed over them, and just sent probably 50 individual video text messages to my leaders. And so that's one thing I think that I've noticed. And it sounds like, I know some of you have mentioned that trying to get away from the institutional stuff and more personal touch points, that to me was a touch point that I think it honestly probably gave me more buy-in with my people and my leaders than any message that I've spoke over the past 5 years. And so that was something kind of powerful that I experienced. But anybody else, real quick, before we go on here, I want to hear from a couple more of you.
Yeah, for us, that was when we started doing small groups a lot more, because we had the number limits on how many people could gather together. So having small groups made us be safe in that. When we split up saying, okay, we only have 10 to 15 people in a group, now all of our groups can meet on a weekly basis, even though 15 people is the max kind of thing. So that worked well for us, because even when we had more shutdowns going on, we could still meet, versus if we were a large group, we would have had to totally stop for a couple months there. So that's one thing that we changed. And then we discovered through that how much better you get to know people when you're only 15 people sitting around a table in a room versus just a big open space talking at them with a service. So it ended up being.
That's good. That's good. I think, yeah, for us, like that was the same thing that we were thinking of too, was small groups trying to get them in. Did any of you try or any of you do online small groups only that meet like this? I'll confess, when COVID hit and we kind of shut down all of our ministries, including small groups. And I encouraged some leaders that said, let's try online groups. I know there's other bigger churches doing it. And it just kind of flopped. It just didn't work at all. Our leaders got back to me and they were just like, yeah, it's just too weird. We can't get over it. No one really wants to do virtual small groups. And so in my context, it seems for the time being, it's not really working too hot. But for any of you, have you guys done digital small groups and did they work?
We had a few. I mean, we still actually have a few going on. Like we still do kind of like we do an online connect class, which is like people who watch online, they can meet and stuff. What we've noticed though is like with the virtual groups, like it's just not as sustainable. So like they'll last like a month, 2 months, and then people are like, all right, I'm getting screen fatigue, and then they'll kind of back out for a little while. That's what we've kind of noticed. But we've been asking the question like, how do we move those people that are still online to in person? And it's just been kind of rough, but they've worked and they haven't worked. And I think it just all goes with the sustainability of if those people actually want to continue doing those online. So.
Jimmy, this is Randy in North Little Rock. Our groups that existed prior, when they moved online, they worked because the relationship already existed. Anytime we force people to create faux relationships online on a Zoom, they fail. So our working principle, whether right or wrong, at least in the early days, was you can't create meaningful relationship like this. If they turned just into teaching sessions, then it wasn't worth it. They could last 20 minutes tops. And eventually we gave them up because it just didn't. The people who were already in existing groups, they found sneaky creative ways to meet on their own anyway. And so we just sort of leveraged and facilitated those. But if the relationship didn't exist prior, they failed.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that's exactly, there's one group I'm thinking of that we had that met for the longest amount of time out of all of them, but eventually they, like you said, started kind of just to meet sneakily on their own. I think they lasted digitally because they had previously met for a couple of years, and so they had those relationships. But all the other ones they didn't last too long. So it sounds like Alyssa, you guys same thing, and Wilmer, you guys tried, it didn't work. Paying, it didn't work flow with your group either. So it's something that I'm aware of and need to probably think about as we move forward continuously into a more digital era. But anybody else have any thoughts on that?
I did I'm a part of our men's ministry, and it was a total flop. We started with like 15 guys, and every week people would drop off, and eventually I was just like, all right, we're just gonna wait until we can get back together. Yeah, it didn't work. People didn't like it.
Yeah, I can't imagine trying to. It's just so it can feel very not flowy at all. There's no flow to it, and so natural relationships, there's a flow to a conversation. So let's see here. There's another question I was gonna throw at you guys. What are some of the things that you are seeing or feeling right now as a leader of young adults? What would you say are some of those bumps in the road that you're hitting that you need to address in your life? When we were listening earlier, we were talking a little bit about vulnerability and sharing maybe some of the things that we're not real proud of, some of our faults a little bit. What would you say is something that you see in your leadership that you're like working on right now that you want to get better at? Not everybody all at once. Okay, Gabe, yes, thank you.
So for us, like I said, we are kind of getting to the stage where we need to start reaching our younger people, the next generation. And one of the next steps we're going to take is, kids. So we have 2 kids. We brought them to everything, and people who have kids have brought their kids, but we're at a point where we need to start changing things up. We're not young adults anymore, so we have to figure out a system where we can make it open to young adults who are younger, and kind of direct it towards them and make it an environment that's inviting and welcoming to them. So that's something that we're having to change up. At our last event, we had like probably 8 kids, so it was a mind change of like, okay, we got to switch things up. So
that's a really good question that might be good to poll the whole group here. So I want to hear from each of you. As far as maybe college aged or young professionals, what would you say the breakup is within your young adult ministry? For us, we probably have 90% college age kids, college age students in our young adult ministry. 10% would be more young professionals. But I'm curious to hear kind of what the makeup is of the young adult ministry that you serve in. I'll just start with somebody here. Alyssa, what's it like there?
I'm still trying to like learn the group, but I think for the most part, people are young professionals. Some of them are getting married and starting to have kids, but they're still in that age where like they're mid-20s, so they're still young adults. And that's like where their community is best within the church. So it's hard. It's a hard balance between, okay, you have kids, you're a young family, you should probably move on to more like adult family oriented things. But at the same time, they are young adults. They do still go through things that other young adults do. So I would say that we have a small community college here, but I think a majority of our people are out of college young professionals. That, I mean, it kind of happens in young adults groups where if you're single, you go there, you meet a good Christian person, you get married, and then you start a family, but you stay in the same group. So that's kind of this cycle that we've been seeing a lot too. So it's kind of a mix, I guess, but I'd say mostly young professional.
Gotcha. What about you, Josh?
Yes, so we, like I said, we just launched our first young adult gathering about 2 weeks ago. What I noticed is probably more of 75% actual college students, and then the other percentage, 20% was young professionals. So,
gotcha. Very similar to us. What about First NLR? Can you guys speak to that as far as kind of the demographics? Do you see more college age or more young professionals?
So we have sort of 2 ways we reach both parts. So in our combined service, we're about 60-40, 60 college age, 40 young professionals. We have 2 sort of connecting points that are separated for them on Sundays. So we see a little bit different group in both of those places that don't always come to our Wednesday night stuff too. But that's about to change because our graduating class is about to move up into our young adult part on Wednesday night. So it'll be more like 70 college age, 30 young professionals.
Gotcha. Have you guys found the same difficulty as us as far as just trying to retain those people who are starting a family, are getting, maybe their first job, first career, and they don't really see the need for young adult ministry anymore? We call them kind of more young professionals. In ours, it's probably the ages of 23 to 30. How do you guys effectively reach them? I see you, Randy, right there. So I kind of am directing this towards you guys.
I think young adults are at this stage of life more than age. So I push back and say the age points don't matter. It's the inflection points. So marriage is an inflection point. Having a first child is an inflection point. The guys who wrote, I forgot their names, who wrote Sustainable Young Adult Ministry, they use this analogy. They say young adults are tumbleweeds that are blowing through, and when they hit something, they'll stick. And if you get enough of them sticking together, you have a mound of tumbleweeds, and now you have a group. And I think that analogy is really, really helpful. So what we try to do is, so last night, actually after conference, a couple of us were talking, and our reflections, we realized it's time now in the COVID world to re-engage some young couples activities. So I don't think you need critical mass to do anything. I think you need to have one person to do something. So I try to, as the leader, make sure I have networked out facilities and application points so that when someone has a kid, of course they're going to inject, because currently today pediatricians tell if you have a baby, keep the baby hidden for 9 weeks inside of your house and don't ever come out. Well, we're not going to get them. It's not going to happen. So that was different from my generation, but that's what they learned. So we got to be prepared and ready, and we have to be uber initiative on engagement all along that process. So they're getting cards from my wife when they have babies. They're getting showers sponsored by young adults where we're going to go be a part of it. We're doing those things. When they get married, we're there in force. We're at each one of those inflection points, because the tumbleweed is going to start loosening and moving again. So for us, we don't see those stage of life issues happen as much because we're working beforehand before we get there. Our biggest challenge is high school graduation. And that, for us, though, it's the other side that's the biggest piece that we struggle with, because we don't have a major university here. So our kids graduate and they leave.
Gotcha.
That's our biggest area.
Man, wow, that's great stuff. And I love the analogy that you use with stage of life and not necessarily defining by age. So do you define your young adult ministry by age? I mean, like if a 35-year-old single dude just wants to roll up and hang out, what do you do in a situation like that?
We say our group is open to everyone but creepy people. And you know what? You're laughing, but all of us are leaders. We know creepy when we see it. And so I'm confident enough in my leadership at this point that if you're a 24-year-old and creepy, I walk up to you and say, sorry, dude, you're not welcome here because you're creepy. You need to go. First of all, I'm the steward of my women and my people. I'm the steward of my men. I am the leader and I guard them. So that's on me as the shepherd, not the sheep. So I fight for those people who are just trolling. I'm being a little tongue in cheek just for fun, but you know what I'm saying. But we advertise college students and 20-somethings. Does that mean we have people over 30 in our group? Of course, we've got a couple people over 30, but they're at a stage of life. I evaluate it. And so a couple times in the last year, we've had some folks show up. We had a guy show up 3 weeks ago. My team's like filling out cards and welcoming him. And I said, you know what? He can't stay. And they're like, why? I said, because he can't stay. So I walk into him and say, hey, if you can't stay, man, this is not for you. Let me take you to our men's group. Let me introduce you to our men's group. This is the place you need to be. And did I lose ministry potential? Absolutely. But I got to tell you, the rest of my crew is secretly clapping and thankful for a leader.
Yeah, I love that. You offend the one rather than offend everybody else, right? So that's great. What about you, Peng? What's your makeup like at the young adult group that you serve in there?
Yeah, we were thinking about it. We would probably say 60% of our ministry is young professionals, and then 40% is probably the more college students. And all of us were like in the young professional age, so we think that might impact, kind of who we draw and how we're connecting to our young people. And I was actually wondering if those of you that have ministries that are more college, university type students, like, do you work like intentionally with your youth ministries in like the transition of like seniors going to college, or is it that you're just kind of evangelizing, teaching, the colleges around your community? I don't know if any of you guys can speak to that.
I'll leave it open. Anybody want to say something to that?
We're starting up a process with that. We're either going to do an event with the upcoming seniors with our leaders, or take them out to eat. I know Logan Ketterling was talking about how they were going to have a dinner with all of the upcoming seniors, and throw an event for them, and then have that with their young adults, just to connect. So because we've only had like 3 seniors come, but we're going to start the process. So don't know what it's going to look like, but we're hopefully people connected to our leaders in the future.
Yeah, at other campus, done kind of like the same thing. Like graduating seniors will throw what we call like a black and white dinner, and it's basically just a time just to celebrate those seniors. But then also in that, the leader of, we call it the Commons, it's a young adult ministry. They'll come up and they'll give a spiel about what the Commons is and how the Commons can be for them, and it kind of just gets them connected, kind of in that way. We've been starting to ask the question though, there just needs to be more, because just that event just isn't doing enough. We haven't seen much of a draw since then, because I mean, we're right next to OSU, so like the kids kind of like stay around. And so we've been having the conversation of like, man, we need to do more, because that one event and that one time speaking about the Commons just hasn't really been enough.
Yeah, I know for me, when I was a youth pastor, we had this curriculum called Transitions here in Minnesota, and so I really focused on each one of my students that was graduating. I didn't have a huge youth group, and so we were like 50 kids, and so maybe 5, 6, 7 of them are graduating at a time. So when you have that, I can do small church stuff like ask them, each where they're going, and then look at the ministries that are in those towns and connect them to churches that they're going to, or Chi Alphas that they're going to. It's intentionality. And I think sometimes like it's another thing to do, but it's really important just for you to make that connection for them that they can fall back on. So I throw it on really our youth pastor to let me know if there's kids that are staying here, or if they're going to be going somewhere. I put a little pressure on our youth pastors to be the ones that help transition them into young adulthood. And yeah, that's kind of how we handle it here. I know too, I always try to ask, it feels weird asking, but I ask to speak in youth group before they graduate. And so just to kind of get myself familiar and them familiar with me. And so that might be something too to be thinking about, is strategically just kind of putting yourself in there on a Wednesday or whatever it is, and letting them get to know you a little bit and talk about some of those transitions too. So very cool. Awesome. Great question, Peng. Anybody else have any other
Jimmy,
thoughts?
just a quick follow-up on what you just said. I really liked how you get to speak in the youth group. Just a question, do you do that like once in May as the graduating class is like getting ready to leave high school, or do you do that like throughout the year, just occasionally, so that they're more familiar with you?
That was really kind of more just like a once a year thing. I think, yeah, like you were talking about, the familiarity is important. And so I don't like forcing myself, to like make it seem like I really want to preach a youth group or anything. But I just let them know that I'm available, and so it ends up being probably a couple times or a few times. I honestly, if I'm not speaking there, sometimes I'll just go to youth group and I'll hang out with the other leaders and try to get a hold of some students and talk to students too. And so if you're not being asked to speak, maybe that's an option for you as well, is just to familiarize with some of the students on a Wednesday night. Do any of you guys help out with youth ministry? Okay, a couple of you. Nice. So. All right. Randy kind of asked a really good question, and I wanted to follow up with it. But what are you guys doing to be intentional with your students? And so are there any, I mean, he was talking more about like kind of the marriage or like the babies that are happening, some of those big life moments. Do you guys celebrate big moments within your student ministry? young adults. What does that look like? What kind of moments do you celebrate with them? Do you do graduation nights, that kind of stuff? So I'm curious to hear kind of what kind of events you guys hold at your church for your young adults specifically.
So, I can talk for a few of those things. I don't know all of them, but I know like we have in the past, which of course COVID's thrown a wrench and everything, but we're figuring out what that looks like now on the other side of it. But like we've done a graduation lunch where all of the key leaders in those students' lives, so their kids pastor, their youth pastor, we have what's called a class pastor that walks with them from 7th grade through 12th grade that's like the lay leader. Our young adult pastor, the head pastor, all those people who have poured into their lives are there, and we celebrate them and we honor them. So we do celebrate that big moment.
Is that for all of the high school seniors you have?
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. And then we obviously have like a retreat that we do, and I think if I understand, which I didn't actually grow up in this church, so I'm sort of on the other side of it, that a lot of the ones here did. We do something called the deepening. And my understanding is there's some really special moments at the deepening that specifically honor seniors as well. And so that transition point is important. But then in the Unite, specifically our young adult side, we have a moment where we kind of welcome them in, where it's clearly they've transitioned over, and it sort of changes year to year based on the class and what their needs are. But we have a moment where we specifically this is when this class becomes young adults, so to speak, and they join us on Wednesday nights instead of going to the young adult ministry or the youth ministry side.
And I'll add real quickly, because I watched it at tradition as someone coming from youth ministry and entering young adult ministry, and now being on the other side of being a leadership for it. So I think it wasn't just one moment that was intentional, but it was this season of throughout this entire time, constant interaction, constant building of relationship, and constant intentionality in everything, making us feel comfortable. And like we could ask questions about transition, or like that no matter what was to come, we were going to be comfortable and there were going to be people there for us too.
And on the other side of it too, those class pastors I mentioned, they actually stay with the graduating class for a full year after they've graduated. And so even if they're in college, they're sort of still connecting to them and things like that. And we do other things within, just intentional, not necessarily big events per se, but
a lot of just random game nights or meals shared, coffee, getting together, just super intentional relationship with you.
Yeah, I was gonna just kind of prod into that a little bit. Those class pastors that follow along with each year. Is there something like that you do for young adults? But if not, I'm curious, is that you said it was a lay person. Do you kind of just do one-to-one, or does one lay person do everybody that, does it follow them through for everybody, or what does that look like?
I'll answer the best I can. The class pastor system, it is usually a couple, so that it's somebody who's sort of modeling healthy relationships and things like that. But they're a couple for the graduating class. So it's not necessarily a 1-to-1, but it is a couple to that class. So say class of 21 and 21, they started with them in 7th grade and moved along with them all the way, or 6th grade, sorry, they're correcting me.
Yeah. We start building that connection in 5th grade and then through the first year of college with us. So they make the commitment to be with us for 8 or 9 years of their lives. Plus, we also have staff members, we call them our class staff. So we'll have several other couples or single people that are on that staff that can build those relationships with us, not just the class pastors. Plus, all the youth leaders and everything else.
I love that. That's incredible intentionality. Just in a few seconds here, can you just share just some of the things that maybe you would do with the class, what do you call it, staff or something? What does that look like? Is it coffee dates? Is it movie nights? Is it pizza nights?
All of the above.
I think
okay.
The kids are into, they just reached out to us and build relationships, whether or not be movie nights. We had Like we did an amazing race with just our class. Like we just had fun together.
And I
We
would
did
say,
life together.
I'll add too, I've watched the class pastor system. They're not just doing things at the church, like if there's somebody, I taught at a high school choir for a while, and I watched class pastors drive 30 minutes to come watch one kid do a performance in a musical.
Yeah, they go
So
to
they're
our
actually
schools.
involved not just in their lives at church, but in their lives outside of church, and are usually developing those relationships outside as well.
And like they go to eat lunch with us in the cafeteria at school, like, and they just do things with us. Like they support us in life. So,
Awesome. Very cool. Well, I know for probably a lot of you, like it is for me, that's really one of the hardest transitions too, is to go from high school into college into your ministries there. So many people get lost along the way. And so to hear that you guys are doing that over in Arkansas is amazing, and I love the intentionality. So we only have a few minutes left here, but I thought let's just kind of take these last few minutes. I just want to hear from each person. Really, why is your heart in young adults? What was your calling moment that kind of really defined that for you? We're just trying to get to know each other a little bit, and so you only have maybe like a minute or two apiece, so we'll try to make it quick, but just explain a little bit about your passion for young adults, or your heart for it, where that came from. Start with you, Shay, if you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. I would say my passion for young adults, I did not grow up in a youth ministry. Like I grew up in the church, but I didn't grow up like having a relationship with the Lord, and I didn't know that could exist. And so I felt like when I came into the community that I'm in now, the way that I was loved by all of our young adults was just something that I had never experienced in my life, honestly. And I've had good friends, but just never experienced that. And so it like to know that like at what I'm gonna be 27, so the Lord found me like when I was like 25, and that community can, like, it is possible to find it, even if you haven't been in youth ministry, or like haven't been involved in young adult ministry for a long time, or have that extensive background. You can still find it, you can still be part of that community. And I think just wanting to love people, and love young adults like myself the way that the young adults in our community have loved me and still continue to love me to this day, is just so contagious, and something that it's just exciting to be a part of and to pour into.
Well, I'm sure that that's a blessing to hear for you, Gabe, because you kind of are, from what I understand, help kind of facilitate some of that.
Yeah, so Jarvis, when we first came on staff, that was the first spot he put us under. So me and Marissa, and that wasn't like a calling on our life or anything like that. It was just a area that needed to be filled, and Jarvis saw that. So it's been a continual area that we keep growing in and we love, and it's just been so exciting to build relationships and continue to grow the ministry and learn and figure out how discipleship works, how relationships work, and trying to figure out those dynamics. So it's a continuing process, but yeah, we absolutely love it. It's been so fun. Shay and McQuaid are awesome. So yeah, we love it.
Awesome. Thank you, Gabe. What about you there, Pang?
Yeah, for me, I think that my passion for young adults really came from just seeing that God's heart is a heart of generations, like that he be known from generation to generation. And I think growing up in an intergenerational church, that just knowing the importance of helping pass that baton down to the next generation, and knowing that they know that God has a calling for them, that God has a purpose for them, and that God loves their generation and has something particular anointed for them. And so I think that's really my heart for doing young adult generation, knowing that, that's just that phrase of like the next generation is the now generation, that if we can really capture that generation and let them know that God loves them and God has a purpose for them, that that's going to advance the kingdom. So that's really, I think, what God's put on my heart for the young adult ministry.
I love that urgency. That's great. What about you, Josh?
Yeah, I also as well didn't really grow up in a youth group. I didn't become a Christian until I was 18. Only Christian in my family, so we just never really went to church. But I really like learned what it was like to follow Jesus in my young adult years. So like when I was 19, 20, I enrolled myself in a Bible college and lived with 12 guys that were all my age. And so like that was just like really big in my life and learning how to follow Jesus. Kind of got I was like, I'm passionate about youth ministry or men's ministry, and I didn't know much about adult ministry. And just really found my passion, really just where I clicked, just because like I'm also a young adult, I'm 23, and just learning what it's like to follow Jesus while also just like living life and going through the things. I just love being able to do that like with my peers and stuff. So
Awesome. Thank you, Josh. And what about you, Alyssa?
Yeah, kind of like what Gabe said, where it was just a position that needed to be filled. That's how I got into young adults. I was working at Youth for Christ in Wilmer for a couple of years, and I felt like God said, it's time for you to go. And I didn't really know why, but I took a step of faith and I was home, not working for 4 days. And I got a call from our church saying that they had need in their young adult area and wondering if I would fill it. And I was like, well, the Lord told me to leave my job. And 4 days later, here comes another job at the church that I'm already going to. And we were already part of young adults, just recognizing that we needed to be pouring into young adults and also receiving from people our age and trying to get plugged into the church. So it was just a really natural fit for me to come alongside Pastor Manny and help him. I'm very like type A admin oriented, and he's not. And so we work together pretty well in that because I can help him where he doesn't shine the best. And his time energy focusing on the things that he does do well. So yeah, that's the kind of fit too well to go, nah, I'm good. It was kind of a divine call in that way, without it being like the passion for young adults wasn't burning, but it was like, this is too perfect for this to not be the Lord's hand moving this. So I got to jump on it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. I got to let you go like right now because they're going to be starting over on YouTube. But thank you so much for being with this part of this session. And I'll hit you guys up after this through email. So
Thanks, Jimmy.
have a good one, guys.